Hi. Welcome to another episode of the CTO-CTO podcast. In this episode of the Pioneers series, our guest is Fabian Wesner, founder of ROQ, ex-CTO of Spryker. Fabian started his career as a freelance developer, became a part of the team building Zalando Lounge, and then quickly became the CTO of Rocket Internet. His vast experience in multiple companies led him to recently create his own business, a next-generation web app platform called ROQ. The ROQ platform is designed for software-as-a-service enterprises and is based on some groundbreaking principles like single language restriction for the entire platform. He's a clean code and solid principles evangelist who calls himself a very hands-on CTO. Tune in.
Hello everyone, today my guest is Fabian Wesner, a CTO with more than 15 years of experience. In the past, Fabian led technology at Rocket Internet Project A and was a technical founder of Spryker e-commerce platform. We are discussing his experience and how the way we build the apps changed. This latter topic led us to the discussion of his new venture, ROQ Technology. Hey Fabian, thank you for accepting my invitation.
Hello Piotr, nice for having me.
That's awesome. Maybe we just gonna start with your background, how you get into software engineering.
Yes. Yeah, actually I'm a software developer since 1998. So I started actually with writing HTML while I was in school. I studied computer science. Afterwards, created my first company like in 2007, and actually I was developing all the time. So I actually was looking into other directions, but all the time I was writing code. I learned Java actually initially, but then switched over to PHP very quickly because I liked it. It's more pragmatic, easier to write. And
mostly
actually,
web apps. Did you do some, Windows application? It was pretty popular in the early 2000s. I was, using Delphi and then C#.
When I was a kid, I was doing some basic and Pascal, but afterwards, actually, I said web is the future. Actually, it was even quite clear in the late 90s, and so I stick with web development. I never looked into anything else. I was never interested. There was no point of building a Windows application.
I absolutely. Like at this point, you are completely right. The focus was important, and the web was the ultimate platform. So how you joined the Rocket Internet? It is first milestone in your profile. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about.
Sure. Actually, it's not really the first milestone. I did some things before. So Rocket Internet, from my career perspective, before Rocket, I was a freelancer working for different customers as a freelance software developer. And I was not really happy because there was no career perspective for me. And Rocket actually, what they offered me is a full-time job. That was 2009, so like 12 years ago. And they said, hey, you can join us. And then we train you to become a CTO. So that was a career perspective for me. That's why I joined Rocket Internet. At Rocket, I was, so Rocket Internet is a company, actually a VC, which has portfolio companies. And they placed me into their portfolio company called Zalando. It's a German fashion shop, 2009. Yeah. So my job there was actually to build a new checkout into Magento. I did that. And then afterwards, I also implemented a warehouse management system based on PHP for Zalando. And then actually, I was part of the team launching Zalando Lounge. Zalando Lounge is a shopping club, like ROQ Privé. It's actually the same business model. So I did that for 1 year. And then at Rocket, I became CTO. I expected to become CTO of one of the portfolio companies, but then actually I became CTO of Rocket Internet.
That's interesting. What do the CTO of VC actually do? Like, because as you said, for me it's very natural that they put you into some portfolio company and you have very clear goals to make this product. And the CTO of the VC itself.
Yeah, actually, Rocket Internet is not. I mean, it is a VC. It was a VC at that time. It's more like operational VC. Yeah. Or at that time, they called themselves company builder. So it's a company which is creating other companies. So they have a team.
Yeah, company builder, venture builder.
Exactly. IT team, marketing team, and so on. And when you have an IT team, you also need a CTO. So that's why. And at that time, there was a plan to copy their most successful company, which is Zalando, actually all over the world. And I was CTO. So my job actually was to execute this from a technical point of view. Yeah. So I started with Magento, and then actually we launched the first shop in Japan. It's called Locondo. I think it's still alive. I didn't check it. Okay. Then we launched another shop in Brazil. It's called Dafiti. This is one of the most popular e-commerce shops in South America today. Then we actually created another one in Russia. It's called La Moda. And that's interesting for me. When you talk to people from these countries, they always know something. And there are more of these shops. There is Namshi and Jabong and Jumia all over the world. There are these kind of shops. Even in Australia, we have the iconic. So my job at Rocket was to build up a team in Berlin. Like we had 100 people around in the IT team. Nice. And then actually I created a technology. Initially, it was Magento, but then we replaced Magento with our homegrown technology. This technology is called Alice and Bob. I'm quite sure that some engineers still know it because it's still in use. Even like 10 years later, it's still used by, for example, you will find some fragments in the source code of HelloFresh and maybe West Wing. These kind of companies, they're still using the Alice and Bob system.
That's not the first time Alice and Bob is mentioned in my podcast, actually, because when I had an interview with Halil Koklu from Lovecraft, he told me that when he was at Rocket Internet, they were using it as well. And also I recorded an interview with Adam Maszek of West Wing, CTO of West Wing. Not yet published, but he also mentioned Alice and Bob. So maybe you can say a little bit more about it. This is a very interesting project.
Yeah. So my job actually was to create a lot of these shops. So my boss at that time was Oliver Samba, like the owner of Rocket Internet, one of the three Samba brothers, quite famous actually entrepreneurs in Germany. Yeah. And he actually wanted to have a lot of these shops all over the world. Like there was a long list and what I did actually, I created a team in Berlin that able to, like a Kanban mode. So there was a team for design, another team for product data, another team for engineering and so on. So and I created a system that allows this kind of repetitive launches. So this was not a very good software quality thing. It was more like intended as a big templating system. So you have different business models, like for fashion, for furniture, for toys. You have different country extensions then, and then actually we just plug them together and we roll out country by country, shop by shop by shop. And the system was very, very fast actually. So execution time was like 15 to 20 milliseconds, server-side rendering. And this is also one of the reasons why it's so hard to get rid of it. So the code quality is not good. So I still have people in interviews today who tell me about their bad experiences with Alice and Bob. They do not know that I was actually the architect. But the problem is it's so fast. So whenever people try to replace it, they make the whole system slower. And from the business point of view, speed is more important than code quality. And that's why it's so sticky actually everywhere. And yeah, I'm still
the
happy.
Architecture was very interesting. Like this even name Alice and Bob means like it's the separation of concerns, right? I think it was very, very fresh approach to the front and back end separation. Maybe you can say a little bit more about this. For me, it was like first time headless to be implemented in e-commerce. Maybe
probably
it wasn't first time.
Actually, so before Zalando was working on Magento, and Magento actually has the front end and the back end and the administration UI, everything in one application. And this is messy because you have different concerns in one application. So for me, it was very clear. We need an application which is 100% focused on rendering the front end, and another application that holds the business logic. So we started with Bob, and Bob, the name of the project was Bigfoot, and Bob means Bigfoot's own backend. So it's Bob. And then afterwards, we need to find a good name for the front end. We called it Alice because Alice and Bob, that sounds just reasonable. We even had a third guy called Connie that actually was the marketplace extension, which is called Seller Centers now. They renamed it after some time. And the idea really was to build, to use like two applications, both PHP. We used different frameworks, like Alice was running on Yi framework, very fast framework. Bob was running on Zen framework, more enterprise framework at the time. And then actually we just implemented it with standard technologies, MySQL, and actually that's it. So it was separation. And I think I've seen it a lot of time when I looked at Magento installation. So all people using Magento, then they try to build some app in front of Magento. That's actually the same pattern, but in our case, without Magento.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what you just said is actually what we implemented with ViewStorefront 1. Like it was I actually an app on top of Magento, separating the users from hitting the Magento itself, even with this Elasticsearch layer in between. So it is pretty much the same approach, which is, by the way, very, very cool. and as you said, very works very well. So it was kind of boilerplate, right? They were just taking it to new project, but it wasn't like framework, but it was more like template.
It was actually a boilerplate template system. So we, with our team in Berlin, we implemented the whole shop until the go live, which took usually like 5 days to launch one more shop. Actually,
wow,
it was super fast because we always copied the last one. Like we took the Brazilian one, removed the Brazilian stuff, Portuguese language, and put in the English language, and put in the Australian logo. And here we go. After 5 days, we had the Australian shop up and running. This is actually what we did there. Part of my job was actually also to hire the first engineers then on site in the country and the CTO, because the idea was that Rocket wanted to hand over this to local teams very quickly. Yeah. So actually overall we hired actually 1,000 people. So we reached the limit of Atlassian Jira at that time because we had one Jira for all the projects. And I did actually a lot of interviews. Like, for example, I had days where I had like 3 hours and I had 12 interviews. So people prepared it. So I had like 50-minute slots to make interviews for one startup. It was very...
Sounds like like crazy times, but also crazy. Very interesting, I guess. Like, I guess you learned a lot in the process.
True.
Having experience with so many teams, so many projects.
Yeah. Also, like I was younger than now. Actually, I was just 30. And actually, when I arrived in the office at 8 in the morning, then actually people from Australia and Japan waited for me. Hey, where are you? We want to talk with you. And then in the evening, when I want to leave the office at 9, then actually the people in Brazil said, "No, you cannot go now. We want to talk with you." So I was like, was a bit of it was quite. It was interesting time.
It was like listening the audiobooks on twice the speed. In Audible there is this option you can speed up things, and you had this daily. That's amazing. And then there was a Spryker. How does Rocket Internet experience led you to found the Spryker? Maybe some history on how it was founded. Very interesting for me.
Yeah, actually, after Rocket, I moved to it. There was actually a management split. So the managing directors of Rocket Internet decided to create their own company builder. This is called Project A. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was moving from Rocket to Project A at that time.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I was actually CTO of Project A Ventures for like 4 years. And my job was more or less the same that I had at Rocket. So again, I created another shop system called Eve and Z. So this time we used the last letters of the alphabet. There are also some shops operating with this. For example, there's a German shop called Contorion. It's an MRO shop, B2B shop. And at Project A, we also got actually some contacts from enterprise companies. They asked us, hey, could we somehow use the shop system for ourselves? And the answer was always no, because Project A is a VC and they cannot sell technology. But there was obvious demand for an enterprise shop system. And this was one of the reasons actually why Spryker was created, because there's a demand. The VC owns technology. Okay, then let's do a startup. Let's fork a startup. There are other reasons why Spryker was created. I think my co-founders, Boris and Alex, told a lot already in several podcasts. But this was one of the reasons. Yeah, and for me, actually, it was an easy decision. So I was CTO of Project A, and this was a chance for me actually to go ahead with our own company, to become a founder. Actually, they sold my baby, so it was clear that I want to go there. So I became CTO of Spryker. Spryker is an enterprise-level e-commerce operating system. So it's now actually, this time it's a very, very powerful shop system, can be used for B2C, B2B use cases, for marketplaces, international setups. It's quite powerful. It's enterprise level now. It's mentioned in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. It got quite good funding recently. It was quite, it's a good story actually. But actually maybe switched from our even set from Project A to Spryker. The name is still there, by the way. So when you look inside of Spryker source code, you will still find the names even set. But the whole source code was rewritten because what we implemented at Project A, this was not enterprise level. So this was our own shop system for our own use cases. And it took us several years actually to rewrite it into enterprise quality.
How you define the separation? Like why it wasn't enterprise ready? Because it wasn't so extendable or like?
Exactly. This is one reason. So at Project A, we implemented this for our own. So we handed it over to the startups, to the new teams.
So it's optimized to your business cases.
Exactly. And also the code was not extendable because there was no update concept.
Yeah.
And for Spryker, needed to redefine the architecture. So first we defined for ourselves what is good code. And the answer is good code is clean code. So there's a book called Clean Code, and we wanted to apply the rules. We wanted to apply the solid principles, which is interesting because I actually, honestly, I need to learn this first. I was also not expert at this, so I need to understand what exactly is single responsibility principle, what exactly is open close principle, what does it mean in our PHP code. And also there are more principles, there are packaging principles, and you also need to learn this and apply this. So we had actually a long workshops discussing with the core team how we want to build this architecture. And I think the result is good. It has some architectural benefits that no other system has. For example, there's no global version number. So it consists of modules. It's almost 1,000 modules today, and each module has its own version number. And this allows us to make updates in single modules, and we don't need to actually increment a global version number. That means the core development of Spryker is much faster compared to, for example, Magento or Hybris. Because
so you mean the core itself is very small, right? And everything is deployed as the modules.
Exactly. So this has a lot of benefits. Also from customer point of view, customers can only install these modules that they need. So B2C shop will not have the B2B modules.
Gotcha.
And this is one of the aspects actually, and there are more. So it's a very large application now, very powerful, and it has a bright future. I'm absolutely sure. So,
how deep as a CTO were you into the code? I guess you were probably not writing the code full time, like for sure not. But if you are a CTO, how deeply you get into the concepts, architecture?
Yeah, very deeply. Actually, I was. So I'm a hands-on CTO. So you're right. I'm this kind of guy which would love to write the code by himself, and I can do this actually. So I have the skills, but I wasn't able to because I have only like 10 or 12 hours per day, and so I was actually working with my core team day to day, and I was looking all the time into the code, discussing the concepts, discussing the code conventions, but also the overall architecture. I was discussing the product. So I was actually drawing the big picture of the system and discussing it with the engineers. So, but I can still explain you almost every line of code in the system and every concept. I think this is the best way to build a large system. If you have one guy behind the scenes who is the main architect and defines everything, together, of course, with very strong lead engineers who then actually can do the details. But you need somebody who holds everything together, and that was my job.
Yeah, I think it speeds up some things. On the other hand, it's very burdening on your side because you needed to be in charge of everything, right?
Sure.
But I can agree with you. Like building the product is different than manage a way that it's still more like art than management in many cases.
Sure. I was lucky because Spryker has a second CTO. So Sergei Bratsnikov, he is now the CTO of Spryker. He was at that time the VPE, and he was managing actually the engineers. So I had my hands free, and I was looking into the architecture, which was extremely good for me because I liked it much more. But actually, you're right. So my job it's very efficient when you do this, but of course, it's a bottleneck situation. And then in 2018, we got good funding, and we started to substitute all my roles. So we hired experts for all my roles, like a very experienced product owner, a very experienced lead architects, and so on. And this actually led to the point that I lost my mission actually at Spryker. So because all my roles have been distributed to other people. And then the question is, what should I do now? Because I was actually a bit of a surprise for me. I didn't expect that, but my first time I created a company, so fair enough. This was actually the reason why there was clear that I cannot really help the company now from the inside, but I can help the company from the outside by joining the biggest customer, or one of the biggest customers at that time, which is Metro AG, a very large wholesaler. And I was actually there leading a project. We implemented a B2B shop in Romania and in Russia. It's a very large shop. It's not you cannot log in there because it's behind a login, but yeah, it's a large project, and it was a successful project. And I think this was good for Spryker to have such a large reference customer.
What was your experience when you just took a look from outside? Because it's like I'm not sure how you were like dealing with the clients being at Spryker or agencies and other users, but sometimes it's it's really surprising, right? How the people are using your software you're building. Was it a case for you, or it was pretty smooth?
No, I was happy that most people adopted actually to our conventions. So most people, so actually we reached a point where people did not discuss anymore because the system was so big that nobody wanted to discuss things. And actually also it was, I mean, there's always a few very strong engineers who understood it in 5 days and then actually started discussing, which is good because I was always happy when somebody wanted to discuss things with me. And of course, not everything is perfect. Of course, you can optimize. I mean, the software is evolving. And since I left, it's changed a lot. Like it's becoming better and better and better now. Mm-hmm. But most people accepted it as it is and then just implemented it the way it is. And this was good experience for me, but honestly, I was used to it from Project A and Rocket before. So when I build something large, then people will use it and will not question it too much.
That's cool. That's really cool. By the way, I also had a conversation with Vahid from Metro AG. Hasn't been yet published, but very very nice conversation on the digital transformation. And by the way, the whole story you said, I can very relate to it. I mean. When I was CTO at Divante, right now I'm no longer, but when I used to be, for first 7 years, I was very focused on managing the people in company and all the things around processes. But then when I started Vue Storefront and got the traction and I could focus on the technology again, it was so relieving for me that I can just focus on architecture, technology, and the things I love. But as you said, I also needed to have people I can rely on, delegate tasks. And then after Vue Storefront spun off from Divante, I had nothing more to do at Divante. So that's why I did this succession. So pretty much the same story.
Okay.
And I think the difference is that after succeeding, I haven't started a new venture yet, but you did. And it's a ROQ web application platform.
Yeah.
Would be great to hear about it. What is it all about?
Okay. So, ROQ. Actually, bit of background story here. So last summer, actually after I left Metro, I made a break. This was Corona times, kids at home and so on. So I actually decided to do several months of break. And in that time, I was actually thinking about what I should do next. Yeah. And I was looking into business models. So what is actually currently rising in the United States? What's going on in Asia and so on? And all the business models actually is software as a service. So I had to build something which is then software as a service because this is actually my business model. And I was intuitively looking for some kind of starter application. So I come from e-commerce world. In e-commerce, when you're doing e-commerce, of course, you use a shop system. You can use a Spryker, you can use a Shopify, you can use a Magento, whatever fits your needs. But when you build a web application, software as a service, when you build the next fintech company or edutech company or intro-tech company, whatever, then there should be something you can use as a start because there's a lot of common functionality. I mean, not only authentication, it's also things like, message center, video calls, billing, subscription. There's a lot of common functionality. And I was expecting that there need to be something like a shop system, but for web application, and there was nothing actually. Mm-hmm. So I found boilerplates like Laravel Spark, for example. But that's not enough power actually. This is just like I saved 2 weeks by using this. This doesn't give me enough. I found things like Firebase from Google, but that's too technical. This is more like a layer on top of cloud. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's low level. Yeah, it's good for mobile app developers, but it's not enough to build a big company on top. I found low-code platforms like Bubble.io and so on, but then I'm locked into something. Then I can draw my application, but it's not very powerful. So I cannot do whatever I like as a developer, and I cannot migrate away from it. So nothing of this actually I was looking for something actually something like a Spryker, but for web applications, not for e-commerce. And there was nothing actually in the market. And that was clear, okay, when there's nothing in the market, there's obviously a gap, because if I need it, then probably other people need it as well.
Gotcha.
And that's why, hey, let's build this platform. This was the idea. Last summer, I have a co-founder, Tim Niemeyer. At that time, he was CTO of Rocket Internet. Mm-hmm. So he is so he was CTO of the same company that I was CTO. It was like he liked the idea a lot, and he was actually jump in. And now we actually we are a company with 2 CTOs, and we're building that platform at the moment. It's very amazing. It's very, very cool.
Gotcha. That sounds cool, but also it's pretty, I would say, general idea. So I'm still wondering, what would be the biggest difference from like, I already got it, the difference from tools like Firebase. They are very, low level, like database as a service kind of things, right? So very low level services. But there also are some environments like Honeycode from Amazon, this Bubble.io, so low-code platforms, or maybe even no-code platforms. So what's the difference? To emphasize the core thing about the ROQ is like when I'm a user, right, and I like to use the ROQ app. How it works? I can generate some application in CLI, like React Create app, but for ROQ or something like this, and then build my own modules, or is it like I'm using some APIs?
Let me explain it. I would like to first explain actually the target customers, because this is actually needed to understand other things. So first of all, we did a lot of interviews with different people, with startup founders, but also with CDOs, CIOs from big corporate companies. So this is actually what we did end of last year. We talked to more than 100 different people, which is actually interesting. It's Corona, everybody's at home, people have time. You don't need to travel to talk to other people.
Yeah, 30 minutes call is no longer an issue, right? It's very easy to schedule.
And we talked to CEOs of companies that have 10 billion revenue. It was no problem to talk to them. Yeah. And they all confirmed the idea. Yes, there is something missing. Mm-hmm. And we identified 2 target groups. One is actually founders of startups, like ourselves. They need something to start, actually. They want to have a quick time to market. They want to save money. They need just a lot of features pre-implemented for them. Yeah. They don't want to start from scratch. And the second target group is actually enterprise companies, large companies. These companies, they want to extend their business into the digital world. So they could usually call it like D2C or however. Yeah. The idea is they have their existing business, all their data is in their ERP system or in their Salesforce, whatever. And they have no idea actually how to build good web applications with React, for example. And also they are looking for some platform that helps them, so they don't need to reinvent all the wheels. I mean, you cannot have this discussion about programming language, frameworks, code conventions, agile process in a corporate company. This will just take 3 years actually to find their agreement. Yeah. And they're looking for somebody who gives them solution for all these questions right away. So the interesting thing is, when you look at web applications, a startup building a software as a service web application, or when you look into corporates do not build SaaS. They call it portals or operating systems. So we built the operating system for the insurance industry. We built the operating system for leisure parks. Gotcha. But the application behind the scenes is more or less always the same. So we have a web application running on the browser, on the mobile phone. Users can log in, and they have a bunch of features. So what Tim and I actually did is we started very early to cooperate with startups. So we have several pilot customers already, and we started building their MVPs together with them. And from these projects, we actually learned what we need to provide in our platform. And actually, there are several things. So our platform will be a mixture of several things. First of all, you need a boilerplate. So something that you can use to start a project, because we expect our customers will always do programming. Yeah. So this is not a no-code platform. This is a platform for developers. So there is a boilerplate, some application which ships with a super nice user interface, fully blown user interface. You have a lot of UI components.
So I'm starting building my new cool product in SaaS, will be distributed in SaaS. I'm taking ROQ, and I have this boilerplate.
Open
So
source.
I have some, I don't know, controllers, some UI elements I can use as a template for my application. That's the one thing.
Correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. We give you actually architecture. Everything is, by the way, TypeScript.
Okay.
And we give you actually a nice web application based on React. We give you a nice backend with GraphQL API based on Express and Nest.js.
Yeah.
We give you like a database. We give you the Docker images to operate it. We help you to run it locally and in the cloud. So it's like, this will save you the first weeks of development already, because like it's an opinionated system. It's well done. I hope it's well done. That's our goal, to make it good.
Yeah.
So people like it. And you have there things like, for example, a fully working data table, but pre-connected with the GraphQL API. So it's not like just the UI, you get it actually the whole thing running.
Yeah.
Just this actually will be helpful. But we know that people will not pay for this. That's why we give this as open source. Okay. Because also this is something that people will mix their own code into. That's why it has to be open source.
Gotcha. So there will be the boilerplate will be open source.
Yes, this is MIT license, and it has to be on MIT because people will mix it with their own code.
It needs to be safe for business.
Exactly. And then this boilerplate application will have a lot of additional features. For example, there will be a whole message center where you can chat with your customers. There will be a tool for video calls, for voice calls. There will be an offer management system inside, reporting system inside. There will be a CMS inside, price management system inside. There will be a lot of features, but these features, they will only be there in the front-end part. The back-end part is not working out of the box, because the APIs, they are on our side.
Gotcha.
We provide also a backend as a service. So this is something that we manage on our infrastructure. It's a very large system, very complex technology, and we expose only the GraphQL API. The idea is that people take our boilerplate, and then they see all these nice features, and if they want to activate it, they need to create an account on our side. And then the features will all start to work, and this will be free at the beginning. And only when you use it more, go to production, then actually we ask you to pay money for it.
So they
need to switch to paid account.
Gotcha. So in this boilerplate, for example, I will have the UI for, let's say, quotation engine, right?
Yes.
But the backend services are just over paid, let's say, paid gateway. So I need to pay you some kind of subscription to use this backend, right?
Exactly. This is one idea. But the story is small. Sorry, it's a bit of time to explain everything, because we put a lot of stuff there which we think makes sense. So these features will give you actually, like, from your overall scope. Let's say you have a scope of, 500 Mondays. With the initial boilerplate, you're saving the first 40 Mondays. Yeah. With our features, you're saving like 200 days from your own backlog. But you still need to build your domain model. You're still something that makes you different from other web applications. So it's in e-commerce, it's different. A shop is always a shop. You always have products, carts, checkout, discounts. But here we're talking about web applications. So like in an edutech company, you have maybe pupils and teachers. While in a fintech company, you have accounts and transactions. You have different domain objects, and you need to build your own database schema, your own GraphQL endpoints, your own data table in the user interface. And for this, we provide a code generator. The idea is that you draw your whole domain model, and then actually we generate the code. This is not background magic. This is actually, we generate the code into your repository. So this generated code will also be open source code. So this way we help you to build your application, to accelerate this development. So you get it much quicker, and you get it in a high code quality, because generated code itself is clean code.
Okay.
We will also have a workflow engine that people can draw their business process, maybe with state machines or similar. This also helps them to automate things. We ship with a bunch of integrations for payment provider, messaging provider, everything that you always need. And for our enterprise customers, the idea is that we provide connectors to Salesforce, SAP, and Navision. So we give actually the idea is we build all the building blocks that you always need when you launch a startup or a business critical web application for enterprise company. And on top of all of this, we also provide you with a development setup that gives you automated provisioning into any cloud, automated deployments, CI pipeline, all these things that you always need. and we pre-build it for you. You don't need to use it. If you don't like it, it's fine. But the idea is we give you a cockpit where you can say, for example, whenever a new branch is created in my repository, then please automatically deploy this to a staging environment on Amazon or Google Cloud. So the idea is we cover all the aspects of your development that cost you time. So you can still build your own application. You will still own your own code. You're not locked into us, except for the backend as a service, because this is but you can also replace the features if you like to. It's your decision. But we give you all the tool set to accelerate your development, and then afterwards to operate it in a very good way, in a cost-efficient way, in a secure way, in a scalable, performant way.
I really like this idea that the boilerplate is open source, because it will, give you some, let's say, free marketing, right? But also it's also providing a huge value to the users, because I think that we are still missing this best patterns for enterprise applications. For me, it's kind of, we had this Ruby on Rails or Django or other kind of generators back then, but they were doing like these, like the things they were generating formed a whole generation of developers and how they do the web apps. I mean, this MVC model even was popularized by those kind of tools and frameworks. And with enterprise, we don't have something like this. So I really like the way you thought about it. I'm a little bit afraid about this business model in a way. Haven't you been afraid that they will just replace your backends? Like, the key to not having guys replacing the backends with their own services, for me, is the customization I can do over it. I mean, I have quotation engine. Let's stick to this example. I have quotation engine, so I'm selling, for example, energetic equipment, cables, other things. So big orders, a lot of items. But I have, for example, very, very customized way of doing promotions, calculating the prices. And I still want to use your backend, right, for this quotation engine. How can I do this?
Yeah. So the idea is our features will be isolated. So they are very highly configurable and they're isolated. So you can use it as it is. You can configure it that it fits to your needs. But if you can also extend it with writing code on your side. But if the feature is completely not fitting into your requirements, you can also build it by yourself and still use our other features. So it's not a binary decision, either use it or not. You can use the whole system. You can use single features, but if you think your quotation system is so special and maybe you want to own it, maybe this is something which makes your whole business model special, then totally fine, build it by yourself. You can still use our CMS or all other features, message center, whatever you like. This is the idea. But it is a backend as a service, so it is, like, by design, you cannot change it completely. So it has limitations. This is like the trade-off.
Gotcha. So it works something like we had, for example, in C++, we had STL, standard template library. So a set of algorithms working on some templates. So it wasn't like any specific data type, but just a template. And in this case, we will have mechanisms working on some, let's say, general entities I can extend or customize or add my own, this kind of stuff. And when the customization is so deep, or maybe as you said, I like to own it because it's my very specific business model, I can still do this because I have a lot of other services I can still pay for.
and I mean, our protection act that people do not churn away like easily. There are two protections. One is like we will offer a lot of business value. So like to replace all of it will be super high effort and for no reason, because when it's working, it's working. and second is our pricing model will be adapted to this. So when people have a very successful, we will have volume prices. So we will make sure that the price is not going too high. If you, for example, have 1 million users using it, then actually it's not like you pay us like 10 million per year. This is not the case.
That's fantastic. I think that is a very, very good approach to monetizing open source. I think the optimal one.
We discussed it. We also thought about having a community and the enterprise version, but this is not working because then you're always in competition with yourself and with agency partners. And so the idea is we give something good for free, which you can also use our boilerplate without our backend as a service. You can just take it and use it and build on top without ever talking to us. This is totally fine.
Yes, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And as you said, this separation that you build for the parts that are just not included in this, like the biggest problem with open source is that you always had, like years ago, right now it's changing, but back in the day you had this free open source version, and then you have extended enterprise, professional, whatever version, and there was always this agency in between which was saying, guys, it's not worth paying for those features, we can build it on ourselves. Like they bill for the works they do, so it was natural. And still, in some cases, when you had enterprise software with really high prices, it was even business optimal. But for vendors, it makes no sense competing this way. I am really a fan of this platform as a service business model, where you have open source, it's really free, you can use it even without paying us $1, but you will, because the value of the backends we provide is so huge that you cannot skip it.
It should be a very obvious value. I mean, if you want to use Message Center, you can build it by yourself. Sure, it will take you 2 to 3 months. It will cost a lot of money, or you just use ours. It will work today.
And how much money it took to build it is one thing, but the second thing is how much it takes to maintain it, and this is the biggest problem.
True. That comes on top, yes.
Okay, that's perfect. So let's go a little bit more into tech. First question is that the core design principles between Spryker and ROQ, what changed? What did you do a different way in ROQ than in Spryker?
There are two main differences. I mean, most obviously, Spryker it's an implemented system for the e-commerce domain. E-commerce domain has a fixed data schema, products, product attributes, categories, and so on. And when you talk about web application, this database schema is not, this domain model is not existing actually. So the only table actually in the database that we always have is user table, but everything else is always up to the domain, to the project actually. And this actually is a super obvious difference, that we need to think in a more abstract way, that we hook our features always into anything. So when users write messages, we do not know if these are not necessarily customers of a shop. This could be actually like as I said, a pupil writing a message to a teacher, or whatever, or somebody writing a message to a sales agent, or what. We do not know actually. This makes a super big difference in the architecture and way of thinking. Then second big difference, our application is, our commercial offering is as a service, so it's running on our machines. The code is the same for all our customers, and this is so our system must be much more configurable through the user interface. So we have to think about everything that users can configure it, and also hook-in mechanisms here is more about event system, for example, that you can trigger events from the outside, and graphical API calls. But Spryker is, you get the source code into your hands. It has also a lot of hooks inside where you can use plugins, for example. But Spryker expects that people will take the source code and change the source code. And it's a completely different approach, and also the architecture that looks differently. So it's very, also Spryker is very modular, while the ROQ platform is not that modular, because at the end it's one backend as a service. And it doesn't matter from the outside if this is one application or microservice stack or whatever. It doesn't matter. We can even use different programming language, because everything is hidden behind the API and the event system.
So what you are saying is that Spryker was designed to the cases where the users modify or replace some modules more than configure them. And here with PaaS, obviously with PaaS you need to have more like extension points. So for example, calling some, I don't know, serverless filters, events, or using event bus to deal with this user space applications, rather than changing anything in the core, because you cannot change it. It's just service.
You're right.
That's
Spryker is on premise, and ROQ is actually as a service. That's the main difference. The architecture and the business model actually, it's completely different.
And also the tech stack differs a lot, right? Because Spryker was PHP mostly, and here I heard that everything is on TypeScript, JavaScript stack.
True. Yeah. Actually, so the reason why I personally switched from PHP to JavaScript, actually I did that last year when I had time, because I had some learning project for myself. I looked into all kind of programming languages because I was using PHP for 20 years, and I actually also was curious. I wanted to look into other stuff, so I looked into Python, Django, into Ruby on Rails, into Java. Spring, and also then into JavaScript.
Yeah.
I'm always working with principles, and one of the principles that I have in mind is the amount of programming languages that you're using should be as small as possible. Ideally, using only one programming language in a project. Yeah. So it's the opposite of the microservice idea, where you use whatever tool fits to the problem, which I think is a bad idea, actually, if you're not super large company, but different topic. So my goal was I was looking for a good programming language, more than one, which allows me to build front-end and back-end and maybe also mobile app. Yeah. And there are several approaches. You can use, for example, Java, then using Java GVT. This is a bit old style.
It's pretty legacy, right? It's from 2006, as far as I remember.
Yeah, but it's working. So you write in Java, and then compiling to JavaScript.
Do they still use it at Google, like on production?
I think it's still behind Google Docs. I think it's still used by Google. I'm not sure, actually. I don't know. There are also other ways to do it. For example, there's something called Livewire. It's PHP Laravel, or in Ruby on Rails it's called Hotwire. The idea is that all the rendering happens on the server side. Yeah. The front end sends all the events, like on click, on hover, whatever events, they're sending it directly to the back end, and then the back end is re-rendering the HTML. Yeah. Then sending the pre-rendered HTML, and then the client side you have a little JavaScript library which is merging the DOM. This allows you actually to write the whole application using Ruby on Rails or PHP Laravel. There's actually also something new in React now. Actually, React server components, the same idea.
Yes.
Yeah. You keep actually the whole rendering on the server side, and you, instead of just sending the data and then manipulating the DOM on the client side, instead of this, you do it all on the server side, and you're just sending the output, the HTML, and then you only need to merge it into your DOM.
Yeah, but I think that the difference is that with React having everything in JavaScript, this is just one of the options you can or don't have to use, and with those things like Livewire and Hotwire, you need to stick to it. And having client side code generated by PHP or Ruby, well, it's not that natural.
Makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense if you have a team full of Ruby developers or a team full of PHP developers. You do not want to have that poor JavaScript guy that nobody talks to because he speaks a different programming language and he's a different type of personality. This barrier that you always have in the team. So having one team with one or two front-end guys and a lot of back-end guys, and they actually, like, the back-end code is clean and the front-end code is a mess, and nobody respects it and so on. So I've seen it a lot of time already, and I didn't want this. So it was clear for me in my next project, I wanted to have one programming language. I want to solve this problem. So I looked into all these approaches, and then actually I thought, okay, come on, it's probably better to use JavaScript on the back-end side. It's a better idea than using PHP or Ruby on the front end. Yeah. That's why I decided, actually, okay, my next thing will be JavaScript only. Also, I like the language itself. It's a very powerful language. It's very advanced, and it's super fast. So Node.js on the server side, it's extremely fast compared to script language, like also compared to Python, Ruby, and PHP. I think it's like, I tried Fibonacci numbers, for example, calculate them. It was always 10 times faster doing this with Node.js compared to PHP. And this also qualifies JavaScript on the backend side also for things like machine learning or data crunching, because it's this very, very fast programming language. I think it's almost as fast as Java. And this was convincing me. You can build super fast applications using the same programming language in the web and also in the backend.
I think that with this V8 engine that is powering the Node is even like C++. I saw some benchmarks, so it was very, very close. I was really interested into WebAssembly 2 years ago. I'm not sure how WebAssembly is doing right now, but back then the Microsoft, Google, and Facebook achieved some, let's say, consensus on the directions, and they did a lot investments into this technology, and there was a lot of benchmarks showing that V8 with WebAssembly is doing exactly the same performance as C and C++, which is extremely fast. But on the other hand, there is a lot of cases where you really need the threads. So it won't work for that. I mean, like parallel processing and other stuff. Of course, you can use processes. It's not the same thing, but still. But also, there is a lot of different, challenges with the memory management and so on. But in general, I totally agree with you. Like Node.js is the ultimate language for now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course, if you build like, I don't know, ERP system, then go with Java, of course. I mean, it's not as powerful as Java for sure, but it's a web programming language. It fits very well here. And it's fast, and there are a lot of people out there. I was a bit skeptical if I find Node.js developer, but there are a lot of Node.js developers in the market. This was not the big problem so far.
I think it's getting more and more into kind of industry standard status right now, like was Java 10 years ago.
True. Yeah, I think it's a good choice for today. I think it will also be a good choice in the next 5 to 10 years. Who knows what comes afterwards? Yeah. Maybe then Flutter will be the ultimate thing, or Dart language maybe. I don't know. But JavaScript, or actually TypeScript, because we want to have it typed, not pure JavaScript, I think it's a very good choice. And that you remove the communication barrier inside of the team. Just this is the main reason, to be honest. So even if the programming language would be slower or more ugly, just that you have every engineer is a full stack engineer. People have a bit of speciality, so some people are more on the front end side, some people are more on the back end side. This is fine, but they write the same language, and you can always say that please, there's one feature, and one engineer can build one feature end to end, or a team can build, and you do not have the separation into front end and back end engineers. And just this is such a big advantage. That's why I do not want to look back, to be honest.
That's true. I have never thought about this way, but I totally relate. Like with this full stack approach, where you are able to build a front end and back end, because in the end, building React front end is no longer the front end works we used to know 10 years ago or 5 years ago, where you have HTML, CSS. Right now you have components, you have functions, you build it all together. So. Absolutely, that's a way to speed things even further. So as you said, you are in charge of removing the time from the equation. You have this equation: quality, time, and budget. So we are removing the time factor, like shortening the time to market.
But it was still, so for me, actually learning this, I was a PHP developer, so I was actually good in doing, I don't know, all these frameworks, Send framework, Symfony, Laravel. This was actually my world. But learning the JavaScript world, this took me actually 2 months. And also, I think it's not that easy for people to switch the languages while they're in a job somewhere. So it's like really, it took me really like 2 months of learning it systematically. Every day I did like 4 to 8 hours of learning, of training. Because, I mean, the language itself took me like 5 days. This was not a big problem.
Yes, of course.
But then front end, okay, which framework? Angular, Vue, or React? Or Svelte? Okay. Well, I don't know which one. I never did something here. So I needed to look actually into all these 4 frameworks and figure out which one is the best bet for now. Angular, okay, was easy to throw it out the window because like it did some DC break. It has some problems here in the past. This is not something I would like to use. Also, it has like, I think on Google Trends it's going down at the moment, which is bad. But React versus Vue was actually quite hard. I decided for React, actually, not because of Facebook. I decided for React for one reason, because I wanted to use the same framework in web development and in mobile development.
So when it comes to React Native was the reason.
React Native, yes. Yeah. There's Vue Native, but this actually compiles into React Native, which I think doesn't sound good, to be honest. Yeah. So React Native has a superb ecosystem with Expo and with App Center for Microsoft. And it's partially native then, actually, after compilation to Android and iOS. So at least the user interface is native then. I think you can do like 90% with it what you could do with native development, but you save like half of the time because you only need one team. And you can also mix it if you like to with Java or Objective-C. Actually, if you want to improve it, like if you want to have some specialities, but in general, it's not needed. So with React Native, you can build very good mobile apps in a very fast way, and they will be absolutely consistent to your web application that you build with React. Yeah. You could even use React Native Web to compile the app into a website, but I never tried that. But in general, just having the same language and then the same front framework for these two things, this is just an obvious advantage. Yeah. Not everybody will agree with this. Totally fine. But I'm always always have the productivity topic in my mind. So I want to offer something to my customers that makes them faster also for myself. I want to have something that makes my team more productive. And this is just the dominant reason for me. And this is why actually React was a good choice. But then it was not, I thought, good, I'm using React now, I'm done. No. How to build pages, how to do server-side rendering, how to manage state, how to style the application, which kind of API would I use, REST or GraphQL.
And how to build the API. You also have right now a lot of choices for the backend frameworks, right?
True. And then on the backend, it continues. Okay, Express. Express is a natural choice, Node.js, but Express is just the routing mechanism.
Yes,
there's no
clean.
architecture behind. Mm-hmm. So then I need to find the framework behind. So I look for something like Laravel for Node.js, but there is nothing that you can compare to. I found a very good one called Nest.js. So it's a modular framework. It solves a lot of problems. Yeah. I used this one. Then actually I checked ORM. Which ORM should I use? Like Sequelize, TypeORM, whatever. And how do I handle GraphQL calls? Actually, I need to learn GraphQL. I didn't know GraphQL before. So what's the resolver? What's the imitation? What's the N+1 problem of GraphQL?
You have also more sophisticated features like subscriptions, fragments, everything.
Yes, sockets. Yeah. There's no socket connection in PHP, to be honest. Also, what happens actually, the way, a Node.js application is running all the time. So all the requests are actually responded from a single thread.
Yeah, the isolation is very important.
Actually, it's like in PHP, you have a no shared architecture because each request is handled by its own
To be honest, for me, that was the trickiest part when I switched from PHP to JavaScript, because I also switched at some point, like it was when we started Vue Storefront, and the first version of Vue Storefront was struggling a lot with those memory-related, isolation-related things. Yeah. It was pretty difficult to get it right.
In PHP, I was used to use instance variables. So you have a class, and the class holds a variable. Yeah. And this is something, if you do it in Node.js, then this variable will be visible to all your users.
Between requests,
Between requests, yes, which is good actually for caching mechanism, but in generally it needs a completely different way how you write your code. And there's a cascading of questions then in React. Should I use class components, functional component? Yeah. Should I use hooks or hooks? What is the difference here? High order component or hook? It took me 2 months actually to become to have the overview and to be able to write all this code by myself. And I think I reached a good level now. And now actually I hired, because I need to reach a level which allows me to hire engineers. So because I was not able to make interviews to verify. So now I hired people which are much, much more experienced than I have in this technology stack. And now actually I learn from them. This actually, But I needed this 2 months, and this 2 months needed to happen actually before we started ROQ, because you cannot start a startup and then learn a programming language. No way. Yeah. So you have to prepare yourself before you do that. So I'm not sure if I would recommend it to everyone. To switch a programming language is really it takes a lot of your time.
Yeah, right now I'm doing something similar, switching to Swift. Maybe not switching, but just learning it for myself, because I was really into AR Kit is for iOS, so Swift is natural, and it's also pretty cool, like very much similar to TypeScript. I think that they are doing quite good job open sourcing it already, but maybe after some years from now will be standard like C# or something. Hopefully, it's a very good language.
Maybe. Yeah. But how much time does it take for you to learn it?
Well, I'm spending just up to 2 hours per day. So I suppose.
How many days?
I started this Monday. Okay. But I suppose that I need about 50 to 70 hours at least to switch.
Yeah. And this is just one language, actually. This is not the whole ecosystem, right?
That's not the ecosystem, absolutely. And the whole AR is a different thing, because you have 3D graphics and again. But I have to have something to learn, just to not stop learning, just in the sake of not stopping learning. Yeah, I think that's good. Okay, Fabian, that was really cool story. I have one more question. The last question is about the tech trends that makes you excited.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm excited in web application, and I think this idea of having one language is a very good trend. So I think I do not need to tell more about this. We discussed it already. Beside this, I'm very, very much in the revolution of cars, actually. So this is something I'm always watching. I'm not an expert here, but I'm very much interested here because it will change our lives so much. So currently, people are driving their cars by themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm really waiting for autonomous cars that they drive without a driver, because this will just change the way how you have cars. You will not own a car anymore. You will just use your mobile app to buy a trip, and then something will come, pick you up, bring you some other place. You can actually do something else with your time. The amount of cars in the streets will drop. There are no parked cars anymore. The streets will be empty. Everything will be much faster. I really hope that this will happen actually during my lifetime, because this will be a very fundamental change actually of how cities look like. So I'm a really bit tired of seeing cars and everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I have kids, they cannot go to the street because like cars everywhere. This is one of the most interesting technology trends that I'm watching, and I'm really hoping that this will happen soon. Yeah. There's one more trend. Sorry, it's completely outside of tech, but it's still interesting for me. I like to eat meat. My family is vegetarian, so I'm half vegetarian. And actually, I'm always waiting actually for really, really good meat, which was created without animals. This is also some technology which I'm looking much. I mean, there's Beyond Meat already, which tastes very good, but it's not very well done, I think. But this is such a huge opportunity to create meat which looks like meat, which tastes like meat, which smells like meat, which has all the characteristics, but without animals.
Absolutely.
And the idea behind is like a cow eats grass, drinks water, and produces meat. So this actually, if this is enough to create meat, then this should be possible actually to build technology to create meat without creating animals before. So this, I'm also waiting for this. So these are the two main technologies I'm waiting for and looking forward to.
Yeah.
Besides web development.
Pretty exciting. Okay, thank you, Fabian, for your time for the talk. I really enjoyed it.
Pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to post under this video on YouTube, or if you are using Apple Podcasts, please post a review or just contact us any other way, and we're gonna try to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.